Welcome back to Crime Time, Inc.
Today we're going to revisit a pretty pivotal moment in American history,
Right.
the assassination of President Kennedy,
Right?
through the lens of a crime that played out on live television.
Yeah, that's what we're talking about. Jack Ruby, a Dallas nightclub owner,
Yeah.
shooting and killing Lee Harvey Oswald,
Yeah.
the accused assassin of President Kennedy,
Uh-huh.
on November 24, 1963.
Precisely. And you know what makes this case so fascinating and frankly disturbing is that while millions witnessed the crime, Ruby's motives remain just shrouded in speculation.
Right.
So today we're going to examine this turbulent figure,
Okay.
his actions leading up to that fateful day, and the complex legal battles that followed.
Okay, so let's start with the man himself.
Sure.
Jack Ruby, not his birth name, was he?
No, he was born Jacob Rubenstein in Chicago.
Okay.
And sources really depict him as a very complex character on the one hand, prone to anger and violence, even getting into brawls and fights. Yet he also displayed acts of generosity, helping those in need.
So a man of contradictions.
Yes, very much so.
What brought him to Dallas?
Well, Ruby moved to Dallas in the 1940s, and he was running several nightclubs, including the Carousel Club, a strip club.
Okay.
But despite this, he was a regular at the local synagogue.
Really?
And even close with Rabbi Hillel Silverman, so very complicated man.
So a strip club owner close to a rabbi, that's certainly an interesting contrast.
Indeed, very much so.
Yeah.
He was a small-timer, constantly seeking validation,
Okay.
always trying to prove himself, but often struggled financially, even owing a substantial sum to the IRS.
And his business dealings weren't exactly squeaky clean, were they?
Well, there were allegations of involvement in, drug trafficking and prostitution, but nothing concrete.
Okay.
One thing that truly seemed to affect him, however, was the anti-Semitism prevalent in Dallas at that time.
Right. The city was a hotbed of political and social tension,
Yeah.
Especially with the president's visit.
Sure.
And Ruby, being Jewish,
Yeah.
was deeply affected by incidents like cross burnings
Yeah.
and swastika graffiti.
Yeah, even an anti-Kennedy ad in the Dallas Morning News, signed with a Jewish name, deeply troubled him.
Wow.
So these events likely played a significant role in his mental state in the days leading up to the shooting.
So then comes the assassination of President Kennedy.
Right.
How did Ruby react?
Well, he was reportedly devastated, closing his clubs as a sign of respect.
Sorry.
His sister even described him as a broken man.
But then his behavior becomes even more erratic, doesn't it?
It does.
What happened in those 48 hours after the assassination?
His actions were a whirlwind. He was giving away money, making strange statements, and obsessively checking on his competitors' businesses.
Really?
He even called a radio station offering photographs he had taken.
What?
So,
There are also conflicting reports about his whereabouts during those crucial 48 hours, right?
absolutely, some sources place him at Parkland Hospital,
Where Kennedy was taken.
right where Kennedy was taken, and others at the Dallas police headquarters while Oswald was being interrogated.
So he was going back and forth.
He even claimed to be a translator for the foreign press.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so very strange behavior.
Was he fixated on Oswald already? Was something brewing in his mind?
That is a key question, and to understand that,
Yeah.
we need to examine what transpired on the morning of November 24th, 1963.
That's the day Oswald was being transferred.
Correct.
Millions were watching on their TV screens,
Millions.
eager to know what would happen to the accused assassin.
Absolutely.
What was the scene like at the police headquarters?
Well, it was a Sunday, and the city was still reeling.
Right.
Oswald was being prepared for transfer to the county jail,
Okay.
and at the Dallas police headquarters, a crowd had gathered to witness this transfer.
And this is where Jack Ruby enters the picture.
Yes, around 11:21 a.m. Central Time.
Okay.
As Oswald was being escorted through the police headquarters basement,
Okay.
Jack Ruby stepped forward from the crowd
In front of the cameras.
in full view of the cameras broadcasting live.
Wow.
He shot Oswald at point-blank range.
What happened in the immediate aftermath?
Well, he was immediately apprehended,
Okay.
and his words, "You all know me, I'm Jack Ruby," became infamous.
It's as if he wanted the world to know it was him.
It seems that way.
Yeah.
His actions silenced Oswald, creating a void that would forever fuel speculation and conspiracy theories.
So Ruby's in custody.
Yes.
What happens next?
That's where the legal battle begins, a saga as captivating as the crime itself.
Okay.
Yeah, the trial of Jack Ruby captivated the world. I mean, everybody wanted to understand what drove this man to kill the accused assassin of the president.
It is hard to grasp the magnitude of this event. What was the defense's approach?
Well, Ruby's lawyers opted for an insanity defense.
That's a bold move. What was their argument?
Well, they argued that Ruby suffered from psychomotor epilepsy,
Right.
and they claimed he committed the crime during a fugue state,
Oh,
meaning he was unaware of his actions at the time.
A fugue state, essentially a temporary disconnect from reality.
Precisely, expert witnesses testified that Ruby had organic brain damage
Okay.
and was susceptible to these epileptic seizures, leading to periods of amnesia and impulsive actions.
Did the prosecution accept this defense?
Not at all. They argued that his actions were premeditated, driven by malice.
Right.
They painted him as an attention seeker who saw an opportunity to thrust himself into the spotlight.
So a battle of expert opinions.
Yeah, very much so. The prosecution's experts countered, claiming Ruby's EEG tests were normal with no evidence of epilepsy.
Did Ruby himself testify?
He didn't, which was likely a strategic decision by his lawyers.
Okay.
But he had given various statements both before and during the trial.
And what did he say?
Well, his statements were often contradictory.
Okay.
It actually supported the defense's argument of mental instability. At one point, he claimed he shot Oswald to spare the Kennedy family the ordeal of a trial.
A desire to protect Jackie Kennedy and the children from further trauma.
Exactly. Then he also claimed he did it to prevent violence against American Jews.
That speaks to the anxieties of the time. It seems he might have been deeply affected by the anti-Semitism he'd experienced, projecting those fears onto a national tragedy.
Yeah, it's a very plausible interpretation. And, this complexity makes it so challenging to truly understand what was going through his mind.
With all these conflicting testimonies, what was the courtroom atmosphere like?
It was incredibly tense. I mean, the world was watching. The pressure on everyone involved, the judge, the lawyers, the jury must have been immense.
And to add to this tension, there was an incident during the trial, wasn't there?
Yes, there was a brief escape attempt by several prisoners
Really?
being held in the courthouse.
An escape attempt during the trial?
Right in the middle of the proceedings.
Oh, wow.
They overpowered guards and briefly took hostages,
Oh, my goodness.
creating, a significant disruption.
What about the jury who would ultimately decide Ruby's fate?
Well, the jury selection was intense, given the circumstances, and they ended up with a jury of 12 people, all white, mostly middle class, and all had seen the shooting on television.
It's hard to imagine finding anyone who hadn't formed an opinion.
It was a challenge. The defense argued it was impossible to find an impartial jury in Dallas, and even tried to move the trial.
Were they successful?
No, the judge ruled that the trial would stay in Dallas.
So the trial continued in Dallas under intense scrutiny. Were there any key moments that stand out?
Well, one of the most dramatic moments was when the prosecution called Detective L.C. Graves,
Okay.
one of the officers escorting Oswald when Ruby shot him.
What was so crucial about his testimony?
Well, Graves testified that he heard Ruby shout, "You son of a bitch," moments before the shot.
Wow.
And this contradicted the defense's claim of a fugue state because it suggested Ruby was aware of his actions.
That must have been a blow to the defense.
His other officers corroborated Graves's account, putting the defense on the back foot.
How did the defense respond to this?
Well, they argued that the basement was chaotic and noisy, making it difficult to be certain who said what.
Okay.
They even suggested another officer might have shouted those words.
Trying to introduce reasonable doubt, did this convince the jury?
Well, the prosecution had built a strong case.
Aside from the medical testimonies, did the defense present any other arguments?
Well, they called character witnesses
Okay.
to portray Ruby as a good man,
Okay.
someone deeply affected by the assassination who acted impulsively, not maliciously.
Who were these witnesses?
His lifelong friend, boxer Barney Ross,
Oh, wow.
testified about their childhood, describing Ruby as patriotic and generous, but also prone to anger.
Right.
Rabbi Silverman also testified, highlighting Ruby's connection to Judaism and his volatile personality.
So they aimed to show his good qualities alongside his flaws, arguing that his actions weren't those of a cold-blooded killer.
Exactly. But ultimately, it was up to the jury to decide, was he a man driven to madness or a calculating opportunist?
What was the verdict?
After deliberating for a little over 2 hours, the jury found Jack Ruby guilty of murder with malice.
And the sentence?
The jury sentenced Jack Ruby to death.
A death sentence for shooting Lee Harvey Oswald.
Yes, some saw this as Dallas's attempt at redemption, showing the world that justice had been served.
But it also adds another layer to this story. Killing the man who killed the man who allegedly killed the president.
Absolutely. Ruby's conviction didn't end the debate. It fueled more conspiracy theories.
With both Oswald and Ruby dead, no one remained to answer the lingering questions. So Ruby is sentenced to death. But that wasn't the end, was it?
No, his legal team immediately began working on appeals.
So Ruby's legal team is fighting for his life. Were they successful?
In 1966, they managed to get his death sentence overturned.
So a chance at a new trial.
Yeah, the retrial was scheduled for Wichita Falls, Texas, away from the media frenzy in Dallas.
Would they pursue the insanity defense again?
This time they considered pleading guilty to murder without malice,
Okay,
hoping for a lighter sentence.
that sounds more strategic. Did the retrial happen?
No, it didn't.
What happened?
In December 1966, Ruby's health deteriorated rapidly.
Okay.
He was hospitalized with pneumonia, and further tests revealed he had cancer.
How serious was it?
It was terminal. The cancer had spread to his lungs, liver, and even his brain.
That's a tragic turn of events. Did he ever get his new trial?
No, just weeks after his diagnosis on January 3, 1967, Jack Ruby died at Parkland Hospital, the same hospital where President Kennedy and Lee Harvey Oswald had died.
It's almost surreal, all these events linked to the same hospital.
Yeah, it's a strange coincidence, but even with Ruby's death, the questions and conspiracy theories surrounding his actions persisted.
Yeah.
He never testified at his first trial, and his statements were often contradictory, leaving many wondering if he was hiding something.
And his death before the retrial only intensified those suspicions.
Precisely, some believe he was silenced to prevent him from revealing a larger plot. The fact that he died before he could provide a definitive account of his motives cemented his place in the narrative of one of America's most enduring mysteries.
It's a case that continues to fascinate, doesn't it? Jack Ruby, a product of his time, a man battling personal demons, was thrust into the center of a historical event that continues to haunt us. His actions had a profound impact on the investigation into President Kennedy's assassination and fueled countless conspiracy theories. It's a story that even after all these years forces us to confront the complexities of human nature and the elusiveness of truth.
Indeed, it's a reminder that even in an age of instant news and global connectivity, some events remain shrouded in mystery, leaving us with more questions than answers.
I am really looking forward to hearing what Simon and Tom think about this case in their weekly review show tomorrow. But in the meantime, we'll be back on Monday for another great true crime episode.